My paints have arrived, hurrah! So I suggested that you need some standard colours and then some particular ones for particular projects. So here I've got the camouflage colours and the grey for the underside that I ordered because I didn't have anything that was really suitable, and mixing up colours wouldn't have been very accurate, and keeping it consistent colour would be difficult where we've got large surfaces to cover. So I invested in some new paints. And in the sort of final preparation for painting, I stuck the hatch for the radio cover in and glued it temporarily with clear. Again, another use for this wonder product. So you just run it in as you would do with the Tamiya Extra Thin Cement, but just use clear, and that will click out easily enough once it's all painted. Right, I painted the underside. I painted in the carriage in green first, and then I've painted the underside using a flat wide brush and pretty well watered down paint. And this has been about 4 coats, I guess. It goes on really nicely. If you notice brush marks, then you've got the paint too thick or it's too dry. So it wants to go on very thin in multiple coats. By the time we got to the end and painted other bits as you go along, like the underside of the ailerons, by the time you've got round it all, it'll be dry again to start again. So you can do your 4 coats pretty continuously. Other things I've done, I had a little go at the tyres, making a bit of tread in them. So you might be able to see there's a bit of a tread. And I did that by resting those on flat on a piece of plastic card to get to the right height, and holding the pin vise hard down on the cutting mat, and then just rotating the wheel round to scribe a couple of grooves in, and flip it over to do the other side. A couple of grooves in there to give an impression of some tyre detail. It's actually not that far off what these aircraft had. And so the next thing to do is to mask up. When you're using an airbrush, very often people will do a nice soft edge to the camouflage and a soft edge between the upper camouflage and the underside colours, which looks great, and it's kind of become the norm. I'm not sure that it's actually historically correct in most cases. I think very often they actually had a hard line. So we've no choice, as we're not using an airbrush, we're going to go for a hard line anyway. So we need to start masking. So I've laid out some masking tape on the cutting mat, and I've cut it lengthways so that we've got some thinner strips, and then it's just a case of taking that and fixing it on where we need. A bit of plastic in there. Fix it on where we need to go, so it's roughly from there down to this joint line. Let's just straighten that up. Okay, that'll do quite nicely. And same on the other side. And one thing to watch is the paint without primer. This the acrylic paint is pretty fragile on the surface, so you do need to be quite careful with it. It's worth sticking your masking tape down on the cutting mat to take a little bit of the tack out of it, so that it's not too sticky. But you really do need to be careful with the paint until we've been able to get a clear coat on there, which will protect it really well. Right, I'm going to carry on masking around here, but just to explain what we're going to do. Before we start painting the camouflage colours on top, it's a good idea, I've heard, I've never tried it, but I'm going to try it. It's a good idea to paint this same underside colour on the masking tape. That way, if anything is going to leak under the masking tape, it's going to be the same colour that's already under the masking tape, and the subsequent camouflage colours on top should not bother leaking under the masking tape. That's the theory. So we're going to try giving that a go. So I'll finish masking this up, start applying the top coat, and we'll see if it works. I've completed my masking. It's pretty limited because with the brush we can stop painting where we want to stop painting, really. There's no worry about overspray particularly. So the tops and bottoms of the wings, I've just left those. I'm confident, reasonably confident, I'll be able to get a fairly straight edge along the wings, that kind of thing. So it's only really the demarcation line here, and I'll just put a bit on the bottom of the tail planes as well. So I've got the same colour as the underside on the brush here, well watered down as usual. So let's just try painting a bit of that over the masking line. It's not terribly thin at the moment, that's a bit sticky. That's better. So nice smooth coat on there. Doesn't matter how far we go over because it's a light colour which the dark colours would cover anyway. This is the reason I've chosen to do the underside first, is generally speaking paint light colours first and follow up with the darker colours, because a darker colour will go over a lighter colour quite nicely. The same isn't true the other way around. So you really want to do your light colours before you do your dark colours. So this hopefully will block the mask and prevent the next colours from leaking underneath and spoiling the underside that we've already got done. So I shall finish that off and then we can come back and start applying the upper surfaces. Now while the various paint coats are drying, in between painting the main aircraft, we can start looking at the canopy. If we were airbrushing, then we'd want to be fixing the canopy in place and masking it all up before painting, so that all of the framework, the delicate framework that's on here, would be masked out, and this would be spray painted. We'd be spraying the interior colour, the green that we've used for the interior of the cockpit, spraying that first, so that when viewed from the inside, that would appear on the back side of the glazing. And it would look like the inside framing, and then we'd apply the camouflage colour on top, and that works very nicely with airbrushing. Without airbrushing, what are we going to do to paint this or colour this canopy framing? We could paint it with a paintbrush, which is really tedious, really hard work, very unforgiving if you make mistakes. You're going to need lots of coats. It's going to be really difficult, and it's really difficult to make it look good. Alternatively, people sometimes paint decal film and apply decals in thin strips for the canopy. I guess that's kind of okay if you've got just straight lines, but where you've got curves on the windshield and things like that, that's going to be hard to do. It's a tricky proposition. What I'm going to try doing here is masking, and just as we're trying on the airframe of doing the initial colour first, or the underlying colour first to prevent leak through, we're going to try something similar on this. So firstly, I've got some of my good old clear, and another use for this is for improving the clarity of canopies. Now the canopy in this kit is actually really good to start with, but it's certainly not going to hurt, so we're going to dip it in a little bath of clear. When I'm done with this, I'll just put it back in the bottle, it will be reused. Take that out, rest it edge down on a piece of kitchen towel to soak up the excess, most of the excess, and then leave it to dry, just balanced on a toothpick to stop it sticking to the cutting mat. When we come back to that, it should be super crystal clear, and it's coated in clear now, so that when we mask it up and then paint it with clear as well, that, if anything's going to leak under the masking, it's going to be that clear, it's going to be the same stuff. Bit of an experiment. And this is a spare canopy. The model comes with two canopies, one for being in the closed position and one in the open. I'm going to model it in the open position, so this is the closed canopy, so it's a test piece. So we'll do half of it masked one way, half of it masked without the clear barrier coat. See how it comes out. So we'll get that ready, and then we can start masking it and painting, and in the meantime we'll get back to painting the main colours on the airframe.